4 years of manipulation left me broken at 22. If you aren't happy, we should break up became his favorite threat. My ex once proudly claimed, being cold gets them to run to you. I finally escaped, but the scars linger. Will I ever fully heal? I entered my first relationship with my now ex-boyfriend when I was 18. In hindsight, it only started because he manipulated me. He confessed his feelings and expressed his desire to be in a relationship. Although I felt the same way, I told him that I did not feel ready for one nor did I want one, since I was just starting university and wanted to concentrate on my studies. Subsequently, he became distant enough that I did not want to lose the 2 years of friendship we had developed, so I agreed to the relationship. I later recalled him giving advice to a mutual friend about that technique. Being cold to someone makes them come running to you, and that is how he got me to agree to a relationship with him. He stated this with pride, which made me uncomfortable, but I merely rolled my eyes while his friend laughed about it. I believe that over those 4 years, so many events occurred that I either ignored or felt uncomfortable with at the time and rationalized away. I was very private about the relationship's details, thinking that sharing them would violate trust, but because of this I overlooked many issues. I will list some examples, not necessarily in chronological order, that continue to occupy my thoughts. Early in the relationship, he yelled at me for dressing in a certain manner. I do not dress revealingly to begin with, but he disapproved of me wearing clothing that was form-fitting around my chest or buttocks. I had more confidence back then and told him this was how I dressed, and he should accept me as I am instead of trying to control me. He then responded with something like, "Oh, so you care more about your clothes than you do about me." And I backed down, feeling that I could not care more about a shirt than about my boyfriend. After some time, we had a video call, during which he made me discard all the clothes he disliked, and I had to plead to keep the pieces I favored, but he disapproved of whether due to fashion or because they were form-fitting. He then stated that I could wear whatever I wanted with limitations when we were physically together, so he could ward off anyone staring at me. At that moment, I felt touched and relieved because I was being given back something he had taken from me. In a similar vein, I had my second lobe pierced and he very vocally disapproved, labeling it as trashy. There was a time when he touched my ears and mentioned they were still pretty. Then a year or so later he declared, "I am going to make you take them out later." Make me. I told him he had no right to make me do anything, but he disagreed, insisting he would get what he wanted one way or another. He alienated me from my family, with whom I am very close. I do not remember much from this period due to the profound depression I experienced, spending days in bed crying while he continually demonized them, and I went along with it, despite my family doing everything and beyond for me. Subsequently, he repeatedly insulted my family to me. He called my father a coward, the explicit worst form of it, referred to my mother as a fat cow, and denounced my sister as a psycho, stating that he had no respect for any of them. Even though I asked him to stop, he would not relent, claiming it was true. I regret not ending it right then and there, and instead defending him internally by saying he was merely joking when he was not. Meanwhile, he would become extremely defensive if I criticized his family, which only occurred in the context of their mistreatment of me. He sexualized me in front of his friends despite my insistence that I was not comfortable with it. In public, he would either slap my buttocks or thighs very hard, hard enough to hurt. He continued this behavior whether in public or private despite my requests for him to stop because I found it distasteful. He interpreted my refusal as a joke, and I would stress that I was serious, yet he continued to treat it as a joke. Additionally, he verbally objectified me, and I also expressed my discomfort with that. I did not like being treated as if I were an object, but he stated it aroused him and thus would persist. He often asked for my assistance with various tasks, such as completing his job applications, doing some graphic design work, and running errands because he was supposedly too busy to do them himself. He was working at the time while I was in university. However, whenever I asked him for help, he made a big deal about it, grumbling and complaining. It felt as though he did not consider my time to be valuable simply because I was in university, never mind the fact that I worked hard enough to graduate as the student with the highest grade point average in my STEM major. Sometimes he would eventually agree after my repeated requests, but most of the time he would say, "No, you do it." I did not help him with the other things because I expected a favor in return, but rather because I cared enough to set aside my own responsibilities to lighten his load, making it frustrating to be treated that way. He berated me every time I did not respond to his texts or calls immediately. I was expected to drop everything to answer him right away. Ironically, he did not hold himself to the same standard. I kept my phone on loud and compulsively checked it whenever I was out with friends. I communicated this to him, but he would tell me I did not need to do that and then get angry when I did not respond because I was with my friends. He would also become upset if I spent too long with them, which left me feeling anxious about the time. The maximum time allowed for spending with friends was 3 to 4 hours. However, when he would disappear the entire day to be with his friends, he would say, "Oh, sorry, I was too busy having fun to text you." He nearly made me cry every other day. He made me feel utterly worthless. He had issues with anger and would explode every other day. I felt as though I was constantly walking on eggshells to appease him and that I was always at fault. Then one day he would hold my face and tell me I was important, only for it to return to business as usual the next day. I cannot recall half of the things that upset him, but much of it stemmed from the points mentioned above. One thing that bothered him was if I made him wait more than a minute when he arrived to pick me up from my home, yet he thought it was acceptable to make my friends or his driver wait when they picked either of us up. He repeatedly told me that if I was unhappy with something, we should break up, over and over again. When I expressed how insecure this made me feel in the relationship, that I constantly felt as though we were on the verge of separation given how easily he presented it as an option, he claimed he would be more mindful, only to threaten me with it again soon after, fully aware of my insecurities regarding it and how it would compel me to concede to whatever he wanted. His family disapproved of me. The context for this was that I had approached his mother for advice, and she had asked me to follow up with her. I did not, as I felt I was imposing since I had gone to her house and had only cried, but when I later spoke to her, I expressed my gratitude while also mentioning I feared I was becoming a burden. She misinterpreted this as me accusing her of not making me feel welcome and that I was coming between her and her son. While he defended me against them initially, it seemed he could no longer do so toward the end of our relationship. He told me that either he would allow his parents to set him up with other girls or we would break up, insisting that I should permit my parents to do the same with me. I told him no, as it made me uncomfortable since it felt akin to cheating, and also because if I were not in a relationship with him, I would not be in one at all since I would focus on my studies. Once again, the threat of breaking up led me to fold, so it seemed he was the only one shopping around, telling me he was talking to various girls, whether things were going well or not, until he ultimately broke up with me. I am currently studying medicine, a notoriously lengthy journey which will also involve a residency abroad. My life goals include finding fulfillment in my career and eventually having a family, and he is fully aware of how hard I strive toward these objectives and how much they mean to me. When discussing subjects like marriage and children, he insisted that I should have a child at the age of 26 specifically, because he did not want to wait longer, and for the first 2 years of the child's life I should quit my job. I vehemently disagreed and we argued, but I ultimately acquiesced as he was always louder and more aggressive. He even recorded a voice note of me committing to follow what he said so that he could remind me later if I disagreed later on. The most painful aspect of all this is something I am still grappling with. I made it clear that I was not comfortable being physical before marriage due to a combination of religious beliefs and the way my parents raised me, but he repeatedly wore me down over and over again. Each time I attempted to backtrack, he would guilt me into complying with his desires. He had me believing that I owed him, and I would feel bad if I did not provide it to him. I would tell myself I could handle it, zoning out and thinking of something else miles away, staring at the wall, the ceiling, or the light fixture. Sometimes he would notice and either choose to comment or remain silent, yet continue anyway. The worst example was when he asked me to perform oral sex, and as I complied, I became so nauseous that I told him I felt like vomiting. He continued to pressure me and then had the audacity to mock me, claiming I was whining about feeling sick while demanding that I keep going. Each time I tried to make an excuse or leave, he would physically pull me back. I thought to myself that I could tolerate it for just 10 minutes. Sometimes he would say it was fine to stop and I would feel relief. But the next time, it was as if he lost all sense of self-awareness. He would mention having a long day at work and needing it, even when our conversations had been devoid of substance that day and were solely initiated by his requests. At one point, he even stated that if we had penetrative sex, he would feel obligated to marry me, knowing I was insecure about the relationship, which would prompt me to feel more obliged. Thankfully, that was one aspect I held my ground on, which may not seem like much, but it is still something. I did not recognize the severity of the situation until after our breakup. It was a gradual realization. I heard a voice line in a game that stated, "I did not know how to say no," which made me cry. Then a scene in a movie depicted a woman zoning out while being intimate with her husband. Lastly, I read a book describing a victim's thoughts on sexual assault, conveying that just because he had not resisted did not mean it did not count. I began writing such histories into my own characters, questioning why I resonated with them, wondering about the origins of the thoughts I gave them, and seeking comfort through my characters' healing. A friend later reminded me that during my relationship I had expressed a desire to gain more power within it. I believe I was consistently aware that something was amiss, yet I kept dismissing it. I did not want to confront the reality. I preferred to think I was imagining things, that my memories were distorted, and that he was not that way because he treated me well most of the time, convincing myself that the remaining issues were merely flaws anyone could have. I did not want to consider myself a victim. Whenever I approached the idea of it fully sinking in, I would withdraw. Ignorance is bliss, as they say. However, I kept reflecting on it over and over again and eventually found the courage to discuss it with a few close individuals. Others were tactful, avoiding the term and focusing on comforting me, but when my sister demanded, "Did he rape you?" I broke down. I did not understand that what I had experienced was rape. I did not recognize that coercion was sexual assault, that saying no 10 times while ultimately saying yes meant there was no consent. I explored numerous websites defining sexual assault and read people's experiences on Reddit, comparing them to my own, and it hurt immensely. It hurt so very much, and it still hurts. I gave away something that I cannot reclaim to someone like him. Or rather, he took something from me that I lost the will to fight for, even when it truly mattered. It leaves me feeling worthless. I do not believe he even acknowledges the extent of what he has done. I find myself trapped in a cycle of reliving this, recognizing more red flags I ignored, and remembering the times I diminished myself, relinquishing my pride and dignity by begging him to forgive me. To add insult to injury, my best friend of 8 years, whom I introduced to my ex, was aware of what my ex had done to me and still chose to remain friends with him. I expressed how hurt that made me feel, and he insisted that my ex had changed and he needed time to contemplate cutting him off. I worried that I was a bad person for making him choose. However, I realized this was not a situation that should even present a choice. If he cared about me or adhered to basic moral standards, he would not want to be friends with someone who had assaulted his best friend. So I distanced myself from him. That hurt more than the breakup itself. The good moments combined with my insecurity and diminished self-esteem were enough to keep me in the relationship for 4 years, even though we faced problems from day one. I did not block him immediately after the breakup. Why? Because I worried that if he needed me, he would not be able to reach me, as I was still acquiescing to his demands. Even though I informed him I wanted no contact and never reached out myself, he contacted me a few times regarding random matters he wanted from me. I learned through a friend I mentioned earlier that he was engaged to the girl with whom he had been discussing things, claiming it was going well. And that is when I chose to block him and everyone associated with him, since I was not close enough to them to want them in my life. It makes me feel incredibly pathetic that it is taking me so long to separate myself from the items he gave me or made for me, but I am exceedingly grateful that it ended. I have many regrets. I am still working on not blaming myself, acknowledging that I can recognize the warning signs now, but I fear that I may not always be able to. I am also anxious about how quickly I become standoffish when encountering someone with a personality type similar to his, because they remind me of him. I worry that I will struggle to trust again, even though I yearn for a connection. I can think clearly enough now to recognize how manipulative individuals operate. I am waiting for things to improve. I hope it becomes easier to coexist with myself. I am concerned about the possibility of running into him. I imagine confronting him. I want to hurt him as much as he has hurt me, or I merely wish for him to understand how deeply wounded I am so that he could live the rest of his life consumed by guilt. But I know he is not losing sleep over this and believes he has done nothing wrong. I am uncertain about what to do, but I am trusting that time and venting will eventually lead to healing. Story 2. Evicted by my narcissistic parents, I became homeless, losing myself in drama and distorted truths. A friend said they'd help me, but only 2 couples came through. Now ostracized, I'm left questioning whether to defend myself or let go of friendships I fought for. How do I start anew? I have rewritten this at least a dozen times. It is just going to be long. There is a summary at the bottom. I do not know if I want advice, support, or for someone to tell me to get over myself, but here it is. The essential aspects of my tragic backstory are not too complicated. A combination of moving constantly, narcissistic parents, and general anxiety led me to develop some bad habits and behaviors. I bottle up my emotions until I explode, and due to one particular house rule, you need to be able to explain yourself at all times for anything or be neglected or punished for a time. I will also lie and say whatever the other person wants to hear when pressed or stressed too hard. I am working on this, and my partner and close friends know about it as well, but it is touch and go. In college, I received a scholarship that provided a housing stipend. My parents decided to have a midlife crisis and attempt real estate, using this scholarship for the mortgage on a mid-sized apartment. I was the property manager and did basically everything but create contracts. After I graduated, I asked to be added to the lease when the property was sold, but they wanted me to continue being the property manager, pay full rent, and also send money back home. They were upper middle class and were very inconsistent with how they treated money. As soon as I pushed back and tried to argue, I discovered they simply wanted me to move closer to them and continue doing my thankless and fairly free property management so they could isolate me from my support system. With the slightest bit of additional pushback, I was evicted effective immediately. My friends had been a fairly good support system during my latter college years. We bonded through enduring Zoom calls and created about 5 group chats where we would talk nonstop. I was the technical founder of the group and brought several people into the community who had good vibes, leading to a small group of queer, neurodivergent individuals with similar interests but diverse backgrounds. When people started graduating and drifting apart, it was a bit scary, but they checked in occasionally, and the local group remained strong, and I relied on them a lot. When I was homeless at first, people promised me everything in terms of support. All I really had was a credit card, a mediocre retail job, and a degree that was okay. I slept on couches and received valuable emotional time with nearly everyone, and then a year passed. Housing me became a bit more complicated. While I always tried to stay only as long as the other party was comfortable and bounce between as many people as possible, the time frame I could stay over went from about 5 days to a maximum of 2 or even 3 days in a row. I also had to earn my keep through chores, buying dinner, or sharing some gossip with my host. This was not required every time I stayed over, but it was very often. If I forgot this unspoken rule, I noticed that I was able to stay less often or only for shorter periods. It did not help that more agreements were walked back as we approached the 2-year mark. My mental state during this time was not good surprise. I went through several jobs and bottled up my emotions so intensely that random parts of my body would suddenly feel like they were burning, like second-degree level pain, and migraines were a frequent occurrence. This did not help when I was thrown into nearly every bit of social drama, primarily commenting on it or agreeing with my host, or when I was approached multiple times by acquaintances who knew far too many details of my situation. People began ignoring my calls, and my attempts at securing housing failed because we lived in a college town, and I needed substantial support if I wanted to get through the year. 2 sets of friends truly stepped up and helped me to a point I could never repay. They lent me money without interest or even expecting repayment, let me stay over at the last minute when weird drama occurred, and were just kind. Group A was medically conscious and asked that people wear masks and test for events they held, while Group B was a little unconventional but were the only people who acknowledged the work I did to build the community. I do not think I ever cried harder than when the latest member of the community, let's say B2, B1's partner, listed all the things they heard I did for everyone else. I would drop everything to help people move, assist with practice and assignments, quietly pay for others' meals when I could, provide rides without asking for gas money, and let people sleep over for days or weeks when their home life was bad. It went on for a while. And I could not stop crying, and how I deserved more recognition and always had a place with them, even though we were not really friends anymore. Towards the end of my homelessness, drama ensued, lots of it. I was essentially kicked out of one of the 4 places where I could sleep due to roommate drama in which I was caught in the middle. Personally, I think it was a mix of sleeping in a shared area, which led to gentle teasing about being an eyesore, and their realization that if they asked me to pay bills and partial rent, I gained some squatting or housing rights and could potentially break their lease. I went to work and returned to find my belongings on the curb. It was sudden, dramatic, and literally no one could agree on the details. Some other friends were canceling on me hours, in one case minutes before I was due to head over. When I finally went there, they kept bringing up Group A and how paranoid and unreasonable they were. I felt placed in a weird position, so I tried my best to split the difference and argued that Group A was probably a bit paranoid, but they certainly had several strong points about health and overall safety. They did not appreciate this. Whenever I tried to make plans with them again, they would provide conflicting accounts of sickness and complain that since I was also very careful, I could not be accommodated and claimed various light illnesses. Sensing the writing on the wall, I began mainly jumping between 2 places and doing as much damage control as possible. Since staying over at about half of the places meant that chores or gossip were expected, people in the group would ask me for help during my homelessness more often than they did before and would seek gossip since I was staying over at multiple different places. So I gave them all the information I could. I agreed with whatever they said and tried to include things that would elicit some pity since I desperately needed help and felt that no one was listening when I tried to remain strong and level-headed about it. Regarding my drama, I aimed to establish my side of the story as best as possible. When the large group that evicted me claimed I had fleas and that I had given them to their animals, they regularly walked their dog in a wooded area and never washed him. I fiercely tried to present myself as the victim since I believed it could severely impact my options, and that was how I felt. When I finally obtained housing, we were not in the best position as I lost my job a week after moving in. While nearly everyone had promised to help financially, where they could, some saying they would pay my share of rent for a month or 2 or even give me enough to cover the security deposit only, one couple followed through. One person who stated they would help the most because they felt bad for backing out of a housing option, and one of the few friends capable of helping, changed their mind when I actually reached out. They provided me with a third of what they promised as a loan. A friend who bragged at a party that they would cover my rent for 2 months and bring over meals backed out quickly as well. Only 2 couples stepped up, one with financial support and another by helping me find odd jobs or gigs to get by. It was incredibly demoralizing. I attempted to let this and several other incidents that occurred during my homelessness go. I ended up just trying to support my friends and rebuild relationships through favors and good deeds, resolving to discuss my feelings about what had transpired with everyone at a later date. However, when some friends asked me for gossip, I was open about my experiences. Only they did not listen. They responded to some of the most demeaning experiences I have ever had in the same manner they would about the mildest gossip. So I am not proud to admit that I emphasized and exaggerated details and attributed various intentions to likely unintentional actions. I also only shared certain details with closer friends whom I knew would keep quiet and omitted details from others to prevent things from spiraling out of control. Some of the only friends I felt genuinely supported me were the two couples that helped me. The newer couple supported me through all the drama, and both members were exceptionally kind. The new partner and I had a conversation where they pointed out how they saw how hard I was striving and how unappreciated I was. I helped others with moves, finances, meals, etc., but when I asked for help, I was left feeling alone and frustrated. I was touched by simply being acknowledged and mentally promised to help where I could. Still emotional and hurt, more drama unfolded. One of the couples that assisted me was treated very poorly. The more established individual tried to integrate their new partner into the group. This included adding them to a side chat that everyone mainly communicated in. Several vocal members of the group, including individuals who I felt had wronged me in some way, were harsh, openly discussing how if they had been asked beforehand, they would have opposed allowing this person into the chat while the new partner could read it. While we had attempted to create semi-written rules for the chat to avoid adding literally everyone that anyone talked to or any disruptive individuals, it was a lot and honestly shockingly cruel. When this occurred, I tried to ask for some consideration and was ignored as the group ganged up on the individual. Eventually, I exploded emotionally and then bombarded the chat with several long messages calling out how this behavior was exclusionary and cruel. I included some mildly related points. My partner had been excluded from joining the chat for about 9 months since two people said it would be awkward if they broke up, while someone else who introduced a partner managed to get them into the chat in less than a week without issues. And I do not recall everything I said, but I tried to avoid calling out specific individuals and included a statement about being the original founder of the chat. I was not the owner. But I did connect everyone and jokingly asked for the chat to be created by someone else, which it was, and it received an okay response. It prompted the new partner to apologize and initiated a much-needed conversation about communication and community. I felt guilty for blowing up and took a step back, which marked the beginning of the end. For a few weeks afterward, I received significant praise from the new couple for actually standing up for them. Since this was deeply affirming and led me to realize I wanted to distance myself from several members of the chat, I did not believe I needed to apologize for stirring drama, and people felt very hurt that I did not. Individuals believed I was being incredibly dramatic and spoke about it. They recognized I did not share the same stories with everyone and began comparing notes. The conclusion they reached was that I stirred the pot too much and was attempting to manipulate everyone. A number of people left the chat, and I was formally uninvited from several social events as I made individuals uncomfortable. When I tried to engage with my close friends to maintain relationships, the new couple I defended blocked me and attempted to start rumors at my workplace to get me fired. The couple that helped the most and with whom I was closest provided me with all the information I have on the subject via a conversation they had with my partner, who wanted to discuss things and ensure we were both okay, where they quoted all the drama and incidents I was involved in, which felt strange. The reasoning I received was confusing. Most people allegedly agreed that I was exaggerating or stretching the truth about a few things, and that I had a habit of doing so or even lying if put on the spot. However, apparently, the majority of individuals concurred I was not wholly lying but attributing intentions to actions and behaviors, and that spreading that information was incredibly ungrateful. There were over a dozen incidents cited as evidence for being problematic, but every one of them was minor or obviously exaggerated, and a dozen incidents where I was merely annoying over 5 years of friendship feels reasonable. One of the examples involved me stealing from work and placing my manager friend in an awkward position. I took a reclaimed sandwich but forgot to ask the top manager beforehand. There were 2 incidents from years prior involving shoplifting that were primarily just me apologizing, which I do remember. The most severe accusation was from a friend of a friend who claimed I could have possibly taken a sneaky, weird photo of them at a Halloween party, which, if true, would have been understandable. However, I uploaded the entire day's photo album to a shared Google Drive without vetting the pictures, as I was instructed to take a few group photos and capture pictures of the local band. Now I am stuck. I find myself suddenly cut off from my community and I am feeling conflicted. I want to defend myself and assert that the reasoning provided is merely an excuse to cut off someone who has requested support, but I know that I am not proud of everything I did since not all of it was entirely necessary. I knew this on some level even at the time. I do not wish to reconcile with all my friends, but I know some will not unless I attempt to reconcile with everyone. I want to be a better person and let go and forgive, but I also feel entirely unappreciated for the efforts I made in gathering the community and resolving conflict. Yet perhaps my methods were manipulative, and I have become my parents. I do not know, I am just taking it day by day. Summary: when I was homeless, I went from being the host of every event and everyone's friend to someone who was not. When I was involved in drama that could have affected my ability to sleep on couches, I exaggerated and attributed intentions to a lot of gossip to support my side of the story. Friends discovered this and recounted a dozen seemingly minor moments of me being manipulative or unreasonable, stating that I should be more grateful before largely blocking me out. I have been told reconciliation is possible, but I do not know how I would or if I want to. A story 3. 31M. Trapped in a life of unbearable pain since 14, I declared, I want life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, or I want nothing at all. After 13 years of battling OCD and relentless agony, I face assisted death, my only escape from a tortured existence. Will I finally find peace? The following are excerpts from my voluntary assisted death application, which has been approved. Just a heads up, there is some redundancy. The pain began at 14 but became inseparable at 16 to 17, and I am now 31. Since then, every aspect of my life physically, mentally, emotionally, and financially has deteriorated. I have spent 13 years in what feels like double solitary confinement, trapped by both physical pain and obsessive-compulsive disorder. Despite countless treatments, nothing has provided even a moment of relief. I once held hope that treatment might restore me, but that hope has faded with every failed attempt. I am finished with hoping and coping. They have not brought peace or change. I want life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, or I want nothing at all. The pain, coupled with intrusive thoughts, leaves me unable to live independently or find any sense of peace. The emotional toll has become unbearable, and my identity has been lost to the constant suffering. I cannot achieve anything I desire from life, and a future worth living is an impossibility. This pain has made me existentially fragile. I can no longer find meaning in life or imagine a future free from suffering. My existence feels like a Michelin 3-star meal doused with salt. I cannot find a single spoonful that does not burn my mouth. My decision to die is not impulsive, but the result of years of reflection on the irreversible nature of my pain. The failure of treatments feels like a betrayal by my body and the world around me. I seek death to end my suffering, as there is no path forward, no possibility for peace, and no hope for the future. I am unable to pursue the achievement of a single thing of value, except death. I grew up with a mix of curiosity, fear, and a love for being physical. As a child, I was plagued by horrific fears and obsessive-compulsive disorder, scared of buses, other people, and even school. From a young age, I experienced violent physical uncontrollability due to intrusive thoughts. Despite these challenges, I found moments of joy in being active. High school was mostly positive, though I wasted time distracting myself rather than confronting my struggles. At 14, I noticed extreme back pain, possibly due to sports, sitting too much, and carrying a heavy backpack. Though it started then, it did not stop my love for physical activities until I was 18. At that point, the pain became unbearable, marking the beginning of a long decline. College marked the beginning of the end. I stopped doing parkour, which I loved, and moved into an apartment that became my first prison. Pain, isolation, and fear consumed me. I have been dead since I was 18. I have never had positive experiences with women, let alone sexual ones, and college deepened my sense of loss and disconnection. On top of everything, I have had acne since my teenage years, and it has spread across my body. This condition has compounded my feelings of isolation, self-hatred, and worthlessness. Looking back, I realize I have wasted my entire life. When I denied life, life denied me, and I cannot buy back a life deferred. I have lived with my parents for far too long, which has been detrimental to my mental health. My extreme pain and obsessive-compulsive disorder prevent me from achieving independence, making it impossible for me to live on my own. The environment has become extremely unhealthy for me. I have never been married, and I have not touched a woman, actually anyone, in 14 years outside of medical professionals. The last time I heard a young female's voice was over voice chat in a game. The moment I heard it, I froze, sank into a depression coma, then laid in bed in the fetal position for about 3 hours before recovering. Despite the support my family has given me financially, helping with treatments, and keeping me alive, no one has been there for me in a way that addresses my emotional suffering. Not a single person in my family can offer even 1% of what I need to truly live. Instead, my existence feels prolonged for no reason, and keeping me alive only extends my sorrow. This has to end. Life could have been amazing for me, but the back and nerve pain ruined what was going to be a beautiful life. I am dying 13 years too late, but that is better than 14 years too late. Schooling was a dark cloud over my life until high school, where things briefly improved. However, college marked the beginning of the end. I initially attended college for sports medicine, but I had to drop out because of my obsessive-compulsive disorder. I then pursued a Bachelor of Science in Game Design through online schooling, and I never once, not a single time, stepped foot on campus, which was less than 2 hours away from me. Furthermore, I pursued game design because of my love for games, but in the end it became a mistake. Falling in love with synthetic worlds ultimately led me to neglect and harm myself in the real world. I regret every moment I spent attending to false worlds, as they have left me feeling empty and disconnected. Video games, once a source of joy, are now a source of anger, disgust, and even allergic reaction. My love for video games ruined my entire life and robbed me of any capability of achieving anything of value. Though I truly loved making games, that passion quickly became an impossibility because of my obsessive-compulsive disorder. I could not focus on writing code or designing anything because I was too busy performing obsessive rituals on my computer for years, unable to break free from them. I never knew what I was losing because my identity was mostly fake and digital, shaped by the characters I was playing and not by myself. Furthermore, I was alone the entire time in college, and after I graduated, I never once had a single job again. I had a general foreman labor-type job during high school and early college, and that job contributed to my back and nerve problems. I also had a sales job while in college, but that was never a career. Since graduating, I have not had a job. My degree in game design has never once been used, and I have lived on less money per year than I received in high school graduation checks from my family. Now at 31, I find myself without any meaningful employment, unable to build a career or move forward in any professional capacity. I once had a love for physical activities, particularly parkour, which gave me a sense of freedom and purpose. However, the pain from my back and nerve issues eventually ended my ability to engage in this passion. Games, which I once loved, have now become a source of anger and frustration, robbing me of the joy they once brought. I have not been able to find meaningful hobbies or activities that allow me to feel connected to life. Self-care was once a hobby I enjoyed, but now it feels as if I am simply taking care of a corpse. I can barely manage basic tasks like clipping my fingernails, let alone engage in activities that once provided me with a sense of well-being. Every hobby or recreational activity that did not involve using my body became a distraction from pain, and I regret ever spending a single second on them. Since I was around 17, I have not been able to focus on anything without the pain stabbing me. Over the last 4 years, I made my health my full-time job. I learned a lot about the spine in my efforts to heal, but I wish I had never known a single fact about it. The pain and dysfunction only forced me to learn because I had no choice. Despite all my efforts, I failed to heal, and it is a constant reminder that nothing I have done has been enough. I see no future of hobbies, recreation, or volunteer work. The likelihood of me ever finding one again is near zero. Despite attempts to push through the pain, the constant physical and mental struggles have left me unable to pursue any form of meaningful activity. I have been isolated from the things I once enjoyed, and am now trapped in a cycle of pain and dysfunction. Before the age of 18, I was incredibly athletic, enjoying physical freedom and strength. However, once my nerve and back issues began, I fell from that high place. My body, once full of potential, was suddenly burdened with pain and limitations. Since then, I have never recovered, and I never will. The vitality I once had has been stolen from me, along with my mental and emotional well-being. The joy of movement, physical strength, and the future I imagined all disappeared. My body and mind have been irrevocably altered, and the person I once was is gone. This loss of my future and the unbearable pain that comes with it is completely unacceptable, and it will remain so until the day I die. Since the onset of my pain at 18, I have lived with the limitations of someone far older, as though I have aged prematurely. Basic movements like sitting, standing, and walking for extended periods are excruciating, and activities like bending or lifting are nearly impossible. Exercise, once vital for my physical and mental health, is out of reach. Daily life is dominated by unrelenting pain, worsened by inactivity but slightly relieved by movement. Sleep is disrupted as I constantly adjust my position to manage the discomfort. These limitations have robbed me of independence, leaving me trapped in a body that feels decades older. If I already feel like this at 31, by the time I am 77, I will feel like 200, my body and mind deteriorating more each year. As I sit and write this, a nuclear explosion of pain radiates from my low back. Just typing sends shockwaves of pain up my back and down my right leg. My prognosis, as provided by a neurologist, is lifelong pain, necessitating the use of pain management. However, as the following will demonstrate, none of the available pain management options provide any relief whatsoever. Over the years, I have pursued an exhaustive range of treatments in an effort to alleviate my condition, but nothing has provided meaningful relief. I have tried many years of guided and unguided physical therapy, which consistently made my symptoms worse. I have consulted at least 3 different chiropractors with no improvement and attempted cognitive behavioral therapy without any effect. Pharmacological treatments included gabapentin, which caused severe suicidal ideation, pregabalin, which exacerbated my obsessive-compulsive disorder, celecoxib, which offered no relief, hydrocodone and oxycodone, which provided insufficient pain control, cyclobenzaprine, which had no effect, diazepam, which was similarly ineffective, and many non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, none of which worked. I also supplemented with approximately 13 different micronutrients over several months, each with no improvement. Other interventions included a lumbar epidural steroid injection, lumbar artificial disc replacement surgery, and an L5S1 bilateral laminotomy. The latter not only failed to alleviate my pain but introduced severe post-laminectomy nerve pain. I have also tried acupuncture, which amplified my intrusive thoughts and caused nightmares, along with massage and cranial sacral therapy, both of which yielded no effect. Additionally, I attempted a TENS machine with negligible benefit and CBD, THC, CBN gummies, which worsened my symptoms and caused brain fog. I own an inversion table that has only ever helped me out of acute crises but has never addressed my chronic pain. I have experimented with a lumbar brace, but it was ineffective. In terms of exercise, I practiced the McGill Big Three famous back strengthening exercises and followed along with the Back Mechanic by Stuart McGill, both without success. I read psychosomatic-focused books such as The Mind-Body Connection and The Way Out, but found no improvement. To accommodate my pain, I have reconfigured my living space to be as ergonomically friendly as possible, but these adjustments provide little relief and are nowhere near enough to alleviate my suffering. I have not found a single pain management option that is worth its side effects. Additionally, I have been offered a spinal cord stimulator, but find the prospect of living with such a device intolerable and therefore will not pursue it. The worst part right now is that because I am going to die a pathetic, crippled, wasted virgin, I suffer an unending stream of pornographic thoughts. Literally an unending flood of infuriating, high-resolution scenes. Every scene sends jolts through my brain. I have been trying desperately to find a modicum of peace before I die, but my mental health has deteriorated instead. If I dare daydream for a single second, the obsessive-compulsive disorder rips the positive attempt away and replaces it instantly with one of my worst fears. I am excited to die, but every day feels like 7. Is there anything I can do to find some peace before I die? This is no time for caution. My brain will absolutely never, for a single waking second, stop antagonizing me and instigating me with humiliating pornographic thoughts. I understand I am a pathetic virgin, but it is too late. We are dying in less than 2 months, just stop torturing me. However, from my perspective, the reproductive system wants my genetic material to escape before I die, so its full force every single second is raging at me to fix this problem. I severely doubt I will comply. As I mentioned, I have acne all over my body and completely hate myself. I avoid reflections and have not looked in the mirror in months, thus I am far too self-hating to have sex. Additionally, the pain and torture have made me completely believe that life is evil, and I have a hard time partaking in the act of reproducing that which I loathe with that which is attempting to seduce me to replicate myself. If I do anything at all, I have to ensure I never reproduce. Of course, this applies to all humans, but I can only prevent my own replication. I would not be able to save my child from what I have, as I was unable to save myself. Story 4. At 24, I feel like the family outcast. You're boring, you need to grow up, my mom says, while my sisters mock me for still living at home. I've accomplished so much, yet they act like I'm invisible. Is moving out my escape, or can I change their attitudes? Hello, everyone's. I wanted to share this post because I feel very sad. I feel like the odd one out in my family. It may be strange to say, but I truly feel so excluded. For context, I am the oldest of 4 daughters. The age gaps between me and my sisters are as follows. I am 24, the first younger sister is almost 18, the second younger sister is 16, and the youngest sister is 13. There has always been a bit of distance between my sisters and me, with me consistently feeling like it was always them and then me. The age difference has not really helped, as we have never truly been in the same stage of life together. My parents have told me, and my sisters have also blamed me for being a bad sister because I prioritized my friends during my late teens and early 20s. I can take responsibility for this and admit that I was not always the best sister, as I did spend more time with my friends than with my family. However, I have really tried to improve on this and have made a significant effort to be much better. It sounds silly to say, but even my sisters have a group chat that excludes me. Even in the group chat that includes all four of us, I find myself initiating all communication to the point where it has been abandoned because it feels like I was forcing the conversation. In the group chat among the three of them, I have seen messages where they have talked about me and commented negatively on my appearance, the fact that I still live at home, my friendships, and just about me in general. Even though they are my younger sisters and I am not supposed to care, it does hurt. You would think that as we have gotten older, the age gap would feel smaller because we are all interested in similar things. However, it feels like the gap has widened. Every time there are arguments, my age of 24 is always brought up. I am told that I need to be more mature, yet at the same time I am criticized for still living at home. They make fun of the fact that I still live at home. I reside in London and staying at home makes more sense for me because I can save money. My father is perfectly fine with me staying at home and I contribute to the household. Don't get me wrong, my ideal situation would be to move out, but the high rental prices are a significant reason why I am still living at home. The comments about my living situation normally would not bother me at all, but I will be turning 25 in September, and for some reason I feel so behind. The fact that I live at home in a small room that I share with my 17-year-old sister, who I have heard wishes I would move out, feels embarrassing. My father ultimately wants me to save and buy a home rather than rent, but I increasingly want to move out. Not sure if this desire stems from wanting the independence or if it is more about feeling the need to prove something. I am also aware that my sisters are not the only ones fueling these conversations about me. My parents, particularly my mother, have had a lot to say about my lifestyle choices. My parents have been divorced for 5 years, and my relationship with my mother is quite rocky due to her actions leading to their divorce. She has spoken very negatively about me to my other sisters. One of my sisters mentioned this to me when they were on good terms with our mother. She has made comments such as, at her age I had already moved out, had my own place and was working. She is so boring, she doesn't do anything with her life, doesn't travel or anything. She is so immature, she needs to grow up at her age. Her list of derogatory comments goes on. I try to block this negativity out, but it can be difficult, especially coming from someone who was once my confidant and a close friend. I have discussed these comments with my father, who has told me that those are her opinions, incorrect ones at that, and that I should not let them affect me because they are not true. Nonetheless, it still hurts. I have been mocked by my sisters and family for not driving. After being on and off with driving lessons for years, I have finally decided to take this seriously and aim for my license before I turn 25. However, this decision has now become a running joke. I overheard my sisters making fun of me for still using public transport and not having a car at my age, saying I need to get my life together and prioritize better. They point out that other cousins my age and younger are driving, making me feel too grown to lack a license, which is embarrassing. At times, I feel like there is something wrong with me. As I get closer to 25, which I know isn't old in the larger context, but it feels to me like I should have my life figured out, I feel lost, sad, and disheartened. I often feel like I am an embarrassment, yet a part of me acknowledges that I have accomplished a lot. I excelled academically in school, earned a degree from university with strong results, and now I have a good job in a corporate environment. Although it took some time to secure my corporate position, and I worked retail since I was 16, part-time, while studying for A-levels and additional part-time work during my degree, I still feel proud of my achievements, despite starting my corporate job later than I would have liked. Another point of mockery has been my retail work for so long, as my sisters criticize me for not working in a full-time corporate job sooner. They only tend to reach out to me when they want something, when they have conflicts with each other, or when no one else is around. Even then, they keep our conversations to one-word exchanges while I attempt to engage in longer discussions. I genuinely believe they find me annoying or weird. I have genuinely tried many times, even with simple topics, to converse with them, but it appears that the three of them are extremely close. They attend the same high school, which I previously attended, and my 17-year-old sister is currently in the sixth form connected to it. I understand that they will be closer due to their shared experiences and the age gap, but it would be nice if they also desired a closer relationship with me. I hope this post is coherent. I apologize if it isn't. I have attempted to provide as much context as I can. I have previously approached this situation with my parents as I felt like a black sheep in the family during sixth form. However, I wanted to make this post to seek advice, especially regarding moving out and how to navigate this situation. I also recognize that it seems trivial to feel sad about what my teenage sisters think since I am 24 years old, but my feelings stem from the fact that they are my sisters.